The South China Sea is a vast, vital maritime highway stretching over 3.5 million square kilometers. Its sparkling blue waters are more than just a geographical feature, they are the beating heart of global trade and security. This sea connects East Asia to the world, serving as a crucial link between the manufacturing powerhouses of China, Japan, South Korea, and the markets of Europe, the Middle East, and the Americas. Every day, over a third of global shipping, worth trillions of dollars, passes through these waters. Oil tankers, container ships, and bulk carriers form a constant procession, making the South China Sea one of the busiest maritime corridors on the planet. Any disruption here sends shockwaves through international markets, causing price spikes, supply chain delays, and economic uncertainty that can be felt in every corner of the globe. But the importance of the South China Sea goes far beyond shipping. Beneath its waves lie vast reserves of oil and natural gas, as well as some of the world's richest and most productive fishing grounds, supporting both industry and tradition. For millions living in coastal communities, these resources are not just valuable, they are a lifeline, providing food, jobs, and a way of life passed down through generations. Control of the South China Sea means influence, wealth, and security. Whoever dominates these waters can shape the region's future, project power, and safeguard their own economic interests. The dispute is complex. China claims nearly the entire sea via the so-called Nine-Dash Line, citing centuries-old maps and historical records to justify its sweeping claims. Yet the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan all have their own overlapping claims, grounded in international law and their own histories, leading to a tangled web of competing interests. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, defines territorial waters and exclusive economic zones, often clashing with China's historical assertions and creating a legal battleground that is as fierce as any naval standoff. This ongoing legal and historical conflict fuels persistent tension, with frequent standoffs, diplomatic protests, and even confrontations at sea. For the Philippines, the West Philippine Sea is about more than territory. It's about sovereignty, survival, and the right to provide for future generations. Its fishermen and future energy security depend on access to these contested waters. The standoff is about more than geography. It's a collision of national pride, economic necessity, and the evolving rules of international law, with each side unwilling to back down. Each nation's interpretation of history and law keeps the dispute volatile, as new evidence and shifting alliances continually reshape the debate. The South China Sea remains one of the world's most contested maritime areas, a flashpoint where the ambitions of nations collide. Here, national interests and global commerce intersect daily, making every decision and every movement in these waters a matter of international consequence. The stakes could not be higher. In the South China Sea, the future of a region and perhaps the world hangs in the balance. On September 18, 2025, tensions in the South China Sea reached a boiling point, sending shockwaves through the region and beyond. That morning, 3 Chinese warships, 1 heavily armed destroyer and 2 modern frigates, were spotted entering the contested waters near Second Thomas Shoal, an area deep within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, and a long-standing flashpoint in the ongoing maritime dispute. Unlike the more familiar Coast Guard patrols, these were frontline combat vessels, bristling with advanced missile launchers, radar arrays, and electronic warfare systems, signaling a significant escalation in both capability and intent. Their sudden arrival was a deliberate and unmistakable show of force, closely tracked by Philippine naval observers and international military analysts, who watched the unfolding situation with growing concern. The timing was no coincidence. Just days earlier, the Philippines, the United States, and Australia had concluded joint naval exercises in these very waters, drills that Beijing had publicly condemned as provocative and destabilizing. Through this deployment, China sent a clear message to the world. Alliances and joint exercises would not deter its resolve or its claims in the region. The Chinese warships began a methodical, almost choreographed patrol, circling the shoal and forming a temporary blockade, effectively sealing off access and asserting their presence with calculated precision. No shots were fired, and the sea remained eerily calm. But the intent behind the maneuver was unmistakable. China sought to assert control and test the limits of its rivals without triggering open conflict. This so-called gray zone tactic forced the Philippines into a difficult position. Either accept the new status quo imposed by China, or risk a dangerous escalation that could draw in regional and global powers. For the Marines stationed aboard the grounded BRP Sierra Madre, the sight of the approaching warships was more than just a provocation. It was a stark and personal warning, a reminder of the risks they faced on the front lines of a geopolitical struggle. Around the world, journalists, diplomats, and military officials watched live feeds and breaking news, as China openly tested Manila's resolve and the credibility of its allies. The silent, unyielding presence of these warships was a potent challenge, one that could not be ignored by the Philippines or the international community. In that moment, the balance of power in the South China Sea seemed to shift, if only temporarily, as nations recalibrated their strategies and weighed their next moves. The world waited anxiously. The next move was up to the Philippines, a decision that could shape the future of the region. The Chinese warships wasted no time asserting dominance near Ayungin Shoal. The destroyer held overwatch while the frigates circled closer, visible from the BRP Sierra Madre. Helicopters launched from the decks, conducting surveillance flights. Chinese vessels broadcast radio warnings, declaring the area under Chinese jurisdiction and ordering all others to leave. Their patrols created a zone of intimidation, complicating Philippine resupply missions. The frigates shouldered any approaching vessels, forcing them to alter course. No shots were fired, but the psychological pressure was immense. The Chinese fleet's discipline was clear. They followed maritime rules, but their presence alone was the message. For days, the standoff tested nerves and resolve. Would Manila back down or stand firm? The world waited for an answer. Manila responded swiftly and decisively, moving with a sense of urgency that reflected the gravity of the situation. Within hours of the incident, top government officials convened emergency meetings to assess the unfolding crisis and coordinate a unified response. The Department of Foreign Affairs wasted no time summoning the Chinese ambassador to Manila. In a tense and formal meeting, Philippine diplomats delivered a strong protest, demanding the immediate withdrawal of Chinese vessels from disputed waters and making it clear that such incursions would not be tolerated. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. addressed the nation and the world, condemning China's actions as a blatant violation of Philippine sovereignty and international law. His statement was firm, signaling that the Philippines would stand its ground and defend its territorial rights. The armed forces of the Philippines were immediately placed on heightened alert. Naval and air assets were mobilized to monitor the situation closely, demonstrating readiness to respond if necessary, but carefully avoiding any direct confrontation that could escalate tensions further. A Philippine Air Force patrol aircraft was dispatched to the area, capturing clear images of the Chinese warships. These images were quickly analyzed and then released to the public, providing undeniable evidence of the incursion. Transparency became a powerful tool. By exposing China's moves to the world, Manila aimed to rally both domestic and international support, turning information into a form of deterrence. Behind closed doors, Manila activated its network of alliances, holding urgent consultations with the United States and other key partners. Diplomatic channels buzzed with activity as officials sought advice, support, and reassurance. The Mutual Defense Treaty with the United States loomed large in every discussion, a silent but powerful reminder of America's commitments to Philippine security, and a potential game-changer if the situation escalated. Philippine officials also sought a visible public show of support from Washington, hoping to send a clear message to Beijing that Manila was not standing alone. The overarching goal was to raise the diplomatic cost for Beijing, rally international backing, and ensure that the world was watching closely as events unfolded in the South China Sea. Manila's response was measured, calculated, and resolute, balancing firmness with restraint to avoid unnecessary escalation while defending national interests. The message was unmistakable. The Philippines would not be intimidated and would continue to assert its rights with courage and determination no matter the odds. The Philippine Coast Guard took the lead on the water. Two modern patrol vessels, BRP Gabriela Silang and BRP Teresa Magbanua, moved to shield the BRP Sierra Madre. They issued radio challenges, asserting Philippine rights and documenting every Chinese maneuver. Cameras and live streams turned the standoff into a global spectacle. The David and Goliath imagery captured world attention. In a bold move, the Coast Guard escorted a civilian supply boat, forcing a tense face-off with a Chinese frigate. The Chinese ship eventually backed off, allowing the resupply. It was a small but symbolic victory for Filipino resolve. The information war was as important as the one at sea. This was just the latest chapter in a long, fraught history. Tensions escalated in the 1990s when China occupied Mischief Reef, shocking Manila. Since then, Chinese maritime militia and Coast Guard vessels have harassed Filipino fishermen and blocked access to disputed areas. The 2012 Scarborough Shoal standoff was a turning point. China never left, and Filipino fishermen lost access. In 2013, the Philippines took China to international court. The 2016 Hague ruling favored the Philippines, rejecting China's 9-dash line. China dismissed the verdict and little changed on the water. The gap between international law and reality persisted. Each encounter hardened positions and deepened mistrust. The struggle for control continued year after year. The South China Sea remained a flashpoint. Two locations define the struggle: Scarborough Shoal and Ayungin Shoal. Scarborough, a rich fishing ground, is now under Chinese control, its lagoon blockaded. Filipino fishermen are regularly chased away, sometimes with water cannons. The loss of Scarborough was a blow to Philippine pride and livelihoods. Ayungin Shoal is different, a submerged reef where the Philippines grounded the BRP Sierra Madre as a military outpost. The rusting ship is a fragile symbol of sovereignty. China's goal block resupply missions and force abandonment. Every supply run is a high-stakes test of will. If the Sierra Madre falls, China would likely move in immediately. These flashpoints are daily reminders of what's at stake. The contest is as much about symbols as territory. The South China Sea dispute is a global concern. Freedom of navigation is at risk. Any conflict could disrupt vital shipping lanes and shake the world economy. The standoff tests the international rules-based order. China's defiance of the 2016 ruling challenges global norms. If powerful nations ignore international law, others may follow. The US-China rivalry is front and center, with the Philippines as a treaty ally. Washington's response is a measure of its credibility in Asia. ASEAN unity is strained, making it harder to counter China's divide-and-conquer tactics. Regional stability hangs in the balance. The world is watching for signals of resolve or weakness. The outcome here could set precedents far beyond Asia. The deployment of Chinese warships marks a dangerous escalation. Beijing is signaling a new willingness to use military power to enforce its claims. For the Philippines, this is an existential fight for sovereignty and resources. Manila's response, diplomatic protest, transparency, and measured presence, shows determination. The risk of miscalculation is ever present. A single incident could spiral out of control. The fate of the BRP Sierra Madre remains a flashpoint. The future hinges on whether disputes are settled by law or force. International support and alliances are crucial for smaller nations. The choices made now will echo far beyond these waters. The South China Sea is a bellwether for the global order.